Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mang. Welcome back to Roll Mangging for our D&D 5th edition campaign, which, sad to say, came to a close tonight on purpose, not just because of shit happening. We brought it to a close a bit sooner than I thought it would. I thought we would have had a bit more time. I didn't know how things were going to all come about, but we brought it to an end to start up some Call of Cthulhu stuff, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But for the final session, it was pretty good. Laughs were had. There were some crazy moments going on. Let's get into it. Okay, so last time we left off, which was a couple weeks ago, we were in this encampment in the mountains. We were a couple days through the mountains. We're at this clearing. We couldn't go any farther because of some cave-in, and so we had to camp out with a bunch of strangers for the most part and wait for them to clear the path. And during the night, the captain of the guard was murdered. His throat just ripped open viciously, but there seemed to be no sign of a struggle. There was no tracks. It was a very peculiar murder. Nobody heard anything. Just craziness. The perfect kill, you know. So we tried figuring it out. We tried doing an aerial scope, see if we could see anything. We tried coming up with possibilities. Nothing seemed to work. The deputy seemed to be hiding something, so I mind thrusted him. And basically we learned he was sleeping with the captain's wife, but that doesn't explain how he could, pull this off. He just seemed like a regular deputy. So we pretty much just kind of let it sit for a little bit. There wasn't much we could do, and then another murder happened. A 9-year-old boy was murdered right near the camp. Just throat slashed open by a couple of rocks. But this time it seemed like there was a bit of a struggle, and there was some blood on nearby and stuff like that. Still nobody heard it, though. And apparently the boy left to go to another camp, like it's freaking summer camp. He went to go to another camp at like 2 p.m. His parents just sent him on by himself, apparently. Oh, you're 9 years old, the captain of the guard was just found slaughtered right near the camp. Sure, you go through the mountain and you go to the other camp, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. What? Like, Michael Myers' parents were better than this. So, he's found right near camp, throat slashed open, just ripped out, and apparently he left at like 2 o'clock, supposedly. And we found his body around 8 o'clock, and his body was apparently a few hours old. So it didn't all add up. Like, why was he still right here? What happened? But it didn't seem like the body was moved. It seemed like he was killed right there. So none of this adds up, And, but we do find some tracks this time. For whatever reason, we find some tracks, and so we bring Benny over to examine it, and he says it's wolf tracks. But there's only sets of 2, like it's walking on its hind legs. And so, if this were Call of Cthulhu, I would have to, I'd be like, you don't know what werewolves really are. That's not like it's not like a common thing. No. But D&D, it's like, oh, it's a lycanthrope, of course, whatever, metagame, no, whatever. So sure, it's a werewolf. Doesn't answer a lot of our questions because apparently this werewolf didn't leave tracks the last time. Nobody heard it, and the first time it didn't even make a struggle. It was just lightning fast, just blah, blah, like dog soldiers. And it apparently attacked in the middle of the day, which, if I know most werewolves, that doesn't happen. So there were still some questions, but Benny said that if you are a werewolf, you can apparently take some herbs to induce the transformation at any time. But those herbs, of course, aren't anywhere near here. And so we were wondering, like, okay, it's likely that somebody in this camp is the werewolf. Or there's a good possibility of that. So how do we kind of suss them out? How do we figure that out? And so if we had the herbs, we could just kind of, make everybody eat a little bit and see who transforms and then kill them, Which is a very brute force method. There's not a lot of subtlety there. But we don't have the herbs, so we have to do the next brute force technique, which really is even more brute force, is getting something silver, like a silver knife, and just cutting everybody in town and seeing who transforms. Or seeing who that really, bothers. And I guess, if they don't have the herbs on hand, but let's be honest, they probably would, because they keep transforming in the middle of the day. They're going to have more herbs. This is not over with. So, whatever. So, fine. So we go to the guy that made me my bed, the weird, creepy guy, Bob. I'm going to call him Bob. I go to Bob, and I ask him for a silver knife. And he asks, why do I need it? Really, it should be none of his business. But I was like, I'll play along. So I say that, I'm a very fine diner, of a man of, high etiquette, and I will dine with nothing less than pure silver. But I don't think pure silver is probably that good of a dining utensil. But anyways, so he says, oh, okay. And so he runs off, comes back, brings me the silver knife, and costs like 10 gold. And so I'm like, okay, now we got it. So we gather everybody up, and we start to explain that there's a werewolf loose. One of us is possibly, likely, the werewolf. And so he pulls out the knife, and so I'm trying to gauge everybody's reaction from seeing this silver knife. And most is kind of just the family of the young boy. They're still crying, and most people are just kind of like, whoa. But one dude is just kind of impassive, and I'm like, that's the bastard. So I mind thrust him, but he resists it, and he's just like, eh. But I motion to Seneth. I'm like, And so he goes over there, and this guy is sitting next to a spoony bard and the dwarven woman, Luciana, who was apparently, she was involved with the captain or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And so he goes to Luciana first, and he's like, I'm just gonna give you a little nick. It'll be fine. And she seems really hesitant, so he just does it really quickly, like without really her permission. He's just whoosh, and the blood that comes out starts to like hiss and boil, and she recoils and growls, and then she shoves some herbs into her mouth and starts chewing. And, sure enough, she starts transforming. It was really surprising that we got it on the first try. I don't know if that was on purpose. I guess yeah. That's probably, I don't think Ren fudged that. Like, I don't think he's like, oh, whoever they pick first, that's the werewolf. I don't think that's how it was. So he must have been, that's who it was. That was pretty impressive. I don't know how Seneth just jumped on that. And so we, of course, we got into combat with the werewolf. So the combat went kind of as you expected. Mind thrust happened. Oh no, I blew my entire load on a telekinetic blast. As soon as it was my turn, I'm like, I'm doing everything. So I did put all my points left into a big telekinetic blast that just wrecked the werewolf. It was great. It did like 41 damage. It was awesome. Some stabbing happened. Some chromatic orbs happened. Adita seemed very intent on flipping over a table to start the battle. Like, it wasn't a proper fight. It wasn't a proper row if there was no table flipped. And so there was no table to flip. It was very disappointing. So she just tried to throw a rock and it missed. And I think that was pretty much all she did. But me, yeah, I did Scion stuff. And so eventually, with all that going on, I think like a final fire chromatic orb that just engulfed it in flames, it just crumpled into a heap. And, Seneth got bitten. Yeah, he got bitten and he had to make a Constitution saving throw, which he made. So otherwise he probably would have turned into a werewolf immediately. So I immediately start meditating, because I was completely drained of power points. I'm like, something else is going to, this is not the end of the day. Something's going to happen. We're going to have to kill Seneth. I don't know. I'm meditating. And so they just kind of left the werewolf body there. They just let it sit there, smoldering. Which normally I don't advise, but we did cut it with silver, which, you know, historically takes away its kind of regeneration or anything like that. So I guess it's alright. Historically. You know, back in the Civil War era, when we had a lot of werewolves running around the battlefields, had to deal with them with some silver. Okay. So I meditated, and then we pretty much just all went to bed. We left the body there, and we all went to bed. And that was it. In the morning, we all wake up. Everything seems fine, but we notice Archibald is missing, the elderly wizard who keeps messing everything up. And so we start looking for him, and I go over to Adita, Mordecai, and I ask her if she's seen Archibald. And amazingly, she had all the information that we needed, supplied by Ren. It was very convenient. And so apparently about an hour ago, he had wandered over to the dwarven woman's tent. Why? I don't know. We'll find out. So we all head over to the tent, and we go in, and sure enough, we find... Actually, there was an unseen servant blocking the way. We couldn't enter through the front door, I guess. So I just blasted him away. I'm like, get out of here. We go in, and we find Archibald dead on the ground, throat ripped out. And it's like, oh, shit, you know. What did we do with the werewolf body? And like, we did absolutely nothing. We just let it sit there. Like some kid could just wander over to it and start kicking it. So of course I run over there thinking that we're going to find just an empty spot. The werewolf is gone, it's murdered again, and so on and so forth. We were really stupid. And, actually, well, I was stupid because I meditated when I should have been actually taking care of things. They were stupid because they didn't do anything. But it was fine, I guess, because the werewolf body was still sitting there, just smoldered. It was dead. Done. So 2 werewolves? That's strange. So I go back to the tent, and we find a small chest, like a small little tiny chest, and it's locked, but it's locked magically. We can't pick the lock, and so I offer, of course, to telekinetic blast it, but they don't need that. And so I crit like on my Arcana check to find out how to open it, and it's some spell that Leoman's magic lock or some bullshit like that. And you need to know the spell, and if you say the spell and hold on to it, it will open. I don't know the spell, of course. I don't know any spells. I know psionic stuff. So very quickly I was like, there's only one man in this area that's going to know how to get this spell, and that is, of course, Bob. And so I go to him, and I'm like, I got something tricky here, and I'm going to need a scroll containing the spell Leoman's magic lock, or whatever it is, you know. He's like, oh, I think I can get that if you give me an hour, but it's going to be a big price. And I say, money is no object. I have like 88 gold pieces, which is not a whole lot, but money is no object. I don't know what my plan is if I don't have enough money to pay him, because, you know, this guy's got to be some form of demon. So, you know, some sort of thing would be bad. He kind of reminds me of an SCP, to be honest. There's an SCP, I think it's called... man, I don't know what, I have no idea what number. I think it's like Mr. Jeeves, but it's probably not Mr. Jeeves. It's something like that. It's a Mr. something. And he's just, it's a bell, and you ring it, and this guy shows up, this butler. And you can request just about anything from him. And he'll disappear. Like, as soon as he's out of sight, he'll disappear, and he'll promptly return with whatever it is. And it can be all sorts of, like, crazy shit, too. Like, you can get, I want a gallon of goat's blood, and he'll just show up with a gallon of goat's blood. But you can also tell him to do stuff. Like, take this Bowie knife and murder the man in the next room, and he'll fucking do it. Pretty crazy, cool SCP, and I think it's something we would all love to have, but it would probably be bad for the state of the world. Anyways, moving on. So he comes back an hour later with the scroll, and I'm like, can I inspect the scroll? Because of course I want to just commit the thing immediately to memory. Because I would hope that Orion has, an eidetic memory, but he's like, oh no, payment first. I'm like, okay, how much is it? And he said, oh, no money, I want one favor from you. And I'm like, that was not mentioned earlier, it's not how you do business. But I agreed to it. And he said, I'm like, what favor? And he's like, oh, I will decide later. Well, it'll be a small favor. And I'm like, okay, do I at least get the scroll? He's like, oh yeah, here you go. So, really, payment is not first at all. Just agreement of payment. Okay, so I guess it's kind of like a credit card, really. So, I take the scroll. He wanders off with me worried about, the sanctity of my butthole. And I grab the chest, I hold it in my hand, I read the spell, and the tiny chest disappears, and a large chest appears. And so we pop open the large chest, and sure enough, sitting on there, and on a little cushion or whatever, is a metal mask. And so, of course, at this point in my RPG history, any mention of a mask is seen with utmost fear and respect. It's a mask, man. Mask. It's a scary word, really. Jesus. But this one's made of metal, and he shows us a picture of it, and it's of course Dr. Doom's mask. And so I pick it up because I'm not afraid. And I inspect it, and it just seems like, there's there's probably a bit more to it than I can tell, but, I didn't roll great on my intelligence. But it seems like a normal piece of metal shaped into a mask. I show it to Adita, and she doesn't roll very well either, so it's just like, okay. And so I'm like, oh, the really only logical course of action is to get Benny and have him put it on. So Roella leaves to go get Benny. And this is where I know it's the last day of the campaign. Like, this is it, pretty much. We may come back to it someday, but more or less, this is like somewhere between a campaign and a one-shot right here. Is the last session of a campaign. So I'm in somewhat one-shot mode. And so I used telekinetic grasp on the mask, and I hold it right in the entranceway of the tent at about face level. And Roella gets Benny, and she hears me do this, over Skype, so she knows what to do, but she knows what's going on. But you can't metagame that, obviously. You can't be like, oh, Benny, I don't want to enter the tent, so you go in there. No, that's way too obvious of metagaming. You would enter the tent, just do it. So of course she enters the tent, and she gets a dex saving throw, but she rolls a 2, so she walks face first into the mask, and it immediately, of course, just clamps on. And she starts to try and tear it off, but it's stuck on. This is not the mask of Nyarlathotep mask. It's not the mask of Hayama, unfortunately. I thought that would be hilarious if it was, and very dickish of me, but it was not. But, no, all she really sees is a bunch of numbers, like golden numbers. But she's not concentrating on the numbers, she just tears, she rolls like an 18 on her strength check. Just like this rage, this furious rage of strength, and just, ah! And so she tosses it to the ground. And I immediately just point to Adita, and she just points to me. but pretty much everyone knows it was me, because who else could, do that? But she's not even, she was about to get mad, but she then sees her dead mentor just laying there. So she decides to just be calm about it. And so I asked what she saw, and she says numbers. And so I made a reference to the numbers, Mason. What do they mean? And it was very foolish of me, because I pretty much knew no one in that group was going to get the reference. Somebody listening to this video will get that reference. I'm pretty confident. It's not that obscure of a reference, I don't think, but that was not the right group for it. And so the mask on the ground starts beeping. And this is where you like, with a werewolf in D&D, sure, you can metagame and say, we know all about werewolves, they're weak to silver, this is what they teach in schools. But a ticking noise and beeping noise, or we would have no familiarity at all with a beeping noise. Like, we would have no idea what that even is. We've never heard this noise before, let alone assume it's a bomb. So I think, like, Seneth, like, tossed it outside of the tent, which is not what I would have done. I wanted to be in character and inspect it some more, because this is really interesting. But he tosses it outside, and so I'm like, don't do that. I'm going to go get it. So I go and get it. I walk outside, and the young man who I tried to mind thrust, I suspected was the werewolf, he's standing right outside. He picks up the mask and puts it on. And he says, like, thank you for giving me back my mask. And so I'm like, well, you're evil. Whoosh! So I telekinetic blast him like 30 feet back. And instead of flying backwards like, whoa, he's just like, Ugh! And so he just stands there and gets pushed 30 feet back. He doesn't even fall over. It's very anime-esque. And so then I had to make another reference, and I said, my mind is the mind that will pierce the heavens. People at least got that one. That was better. And so everyone else came out because they heard the thunderclap noise from my blast. And we taunted each other, and then we got into a fight, because that's what you do. And he had like blasts that came out of his arms. He was a robot. Let's be quite clear with this. He was a Doombot. So he's firing blasts, and we're fighting him, and he's resistant to slashing weapons, and I didn't really do that much in that fight. I did some mind thrusts. There was a good telekinetic blast in there, so on and so forth. But Adita and Seneth go down, because they were the rogues in the thick of things. And so they go down, and we eventually do enough damage to knock him down, where he's pretty much mostly out of it, but he's lying face down in the ground, and he's like laughing. And I just forgot a pretty key part. At the start of the battle, we were wondering what to do. The battle was about to begin, and I was really, really searching for like a clever one-liner to just kick this off and like really be badass. But really, Orion is not badass. He wouldn't have a good one-liner. So I just summoned Garuda, because we figured this is the big battle. It's the end of the campaign. Summon Garuda. So we summon Garuda. She shows up. She walks out of this portal of light or whatever shit. And so I yell over to the robot dude. I'm like, eat shit. That's Orion's clever one-liner to impress everybody. And then battle begins. But we didn't tell Garuda to do anything. We didn't say, kill this guy. So she just stood there the whole time. So we won, I guess, on our own, which is, we won with the power of friendship is what happened. But Garuda didn't do anything. But the guy's laying down there laughing, and I'm like, can you, step on him or something, finish this? So she goes over, and she starts to, put her hand out to, Kamehameha him. And his laughing gets louder and louder, and the whole area grows red and darkens and stuff. And he stands up, and he says did you think you could fight the real form of Dr. Doom or some shit like that? He says some bullshit comic book thing. as I'm sure you can imagine. And then a giant portal starts opening up and sucks us in, and tentacles come out, and I try to resist. I try to pull out my vial of perfume, but it doesn't do anything, and we get sucked into the portal, and we all wake up some amount of time later. We all wake up perfectly healthy, everybody's good, and we're in a strange city that we've never been in before. And so I'm thinking, this is basically my thought process. I'm like, okay, we wake up. That's going to be bad. We shouldn't have woken up. We're in a city. Okay, is this going to be... It's going to be not... This is not going to be my hometown. You know, this isn't going to be anywhere normal. So is it going to be... Is he going to try to link this to, like, Call of Cthulhu and we're in modern day or 1920 America? Is this going to be Shadowrun? We're in the future. Is it going to be Numenera? We're in the way future. What is this going to be? And then he says, there's no sky. You look up and there's just more city. And I'm like, of course. Now I know where we are. And we see a bunch of people, and it's just kind of a mishmash of people walking past. But then we talk to each other, and we're like, we're all right, but what happened? How do we survive? What's going on? And as we're talking, the crowd of people next to us disperse. We're in an alley, I guess. They all disperse, and we see someone approaching us. A woman. And so right there, I was just like, all right, fuck you, Ren. I'm gonna metagame my ass off, because screw you. And so I turn around. I immediately turn around from the rest of the group. I just face the alley, and I just like close my eyes, and I don't say a word. That's how you metagame that. Just put an end to it. But the others, it was actually really impressive that none of the others knew anything about this. And I guess really, as a casual RPG role player, you know, a casual role player, yeah, you would have no idea. Not that this is really that esoteric, but the majority of the population does not know what's going on here. If you just play D&D, like, you know, 4th edition or something like that. Yeah, I guess 4th edition specifically. Anyways, so they're all like, you know, what's going on? They know it's bad, you know, because I'm saying like all this shit, and I turn around and I don't say anything. Like, yeah, no, it's bad, but you know. So this lady approaches them, followed by a guy, and I'm really curious on what Seneth is going to do, because he's really the biggest culprit here. But he decides to just bow. And she walks past him. Well, really, you know, she floats past him. And he says, well, that was rude. And I'm like, well, you're fucked. And the guy following her, which I assume is a Dabu, he approaches Seneth, and he's like, you're not from around here. Actually, it couldn't have been a Dabu, because he spoke. So I don't know who the hell it was. Ren, this doesn't make any sense. I'm calling you out. What kind of guy would follow her unless it's a Dabu? I don't understand. I don't know what you're doing. I don't like it. But he said, you're not supposed to be around here. And, you know, Seneth's like, no, we're not from around here. He's like, how did you get here? And so... I think it was probably Roelic. She was conscious. You know, like we got sucked through a portal and there was tentacles and blah 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 blah. And so when she says portal, the woman turns around and faces them, and I'm like, wow, you're all fucked now. And the guy like lowers his voice a lot, and he's like, well, you're gonna have to find your own way out. And he hurries off, and the woman turns, and they both leave. And I'm like, wow. That is not how I would have DM'd it, I can tell you that. As soon... he said... Oh, no, okay. As soon as she turned, I'd be... If I was DMing, I'd be like, yeah, you're done. You're done. Actually, no, as soon as he said, well, that was rude, you'd be gone. And so I finally then turned back around, and I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. I just had a really bad feeling about all that. And so we get approached then by another guy, a tout, I believe. who's a local guide. He says, "Oh, I really wasn't even listening. I was looking up what this guy was called." But he basically introduced himself. And he's like, "Oh, I'm from around here. I can show you around for a small price. Show you the ropes and things like that, and blah blah blah." And we're like, "Yeah, all right. I get. We need somebody. We don't know what's going on." He's like, "All right, welcome to Sigil." And that's where we ended the campaign. Potentially to be picked up at a later point, because that is a really cool starting point if it can be DM'd properly. It's something that I've always wanted to DM, but I would never feel confident enough doing it, because Sigil, Planescape, all that that can be pretty intense to DM if you don't know what you're doing, because there's a lot going on around there. But I guess with a mostly uninitiated group, like really I'd be the only one calling Ren out on bullshit, so I guess it wouldn't be that terrible, but it is still a project. But anyways, okay, so if you're completely confused by all that, I'm pretty sure I've talked about this in other roamings way back, but Sigil. Okay, so Sigil is more or less the centerpiece of the Planescape setting. And Planescape is kind of a it's a source book. It's a setting, I guess, for Dungeons and Dragons. It goes way back. Most famously depicted in the computer game Planescape Torment, which if you haven't played, I don't know why you're listening to this. You should be playing Planescape Torment. And so, I'm pretty sure I've explained all this before, but Planescape is it's a really unique setting. And if you watch Spoonie's Counter Monkey videos, which you really should do, if you watch my stuff if you watch Roll Mangging, you should have already watched all of the Counter Monkey stuff. Because he's got some good stories and he's got some good information, even though lately it's whatever. So Planescape is basically a giant ring. And the ring is divided up into sections. And each section of the ring, it represents a different how am I blanking on that word? A different morality, a different that's not the word. Wow, I'm really blanking on it. Lawful evil, lawful good, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure I'll remember it in like an hour and I'll kick myself. Yeah, so, one section will represent lawful evil, one section will represent lawful good, and so on and so forth. And people, you can actually, for the most part, walk around this ring. And so you can go from the section completely representing chaotic neutral, and you can walk to the section representing true neutral. And there are, creatures that exist there, and there are deities that exist there, and so, you could bump into all these different deities, not necessarily, but they're there, they exist. And so all these different deities all exist on this one ring. And so it's, as you can imagine, a quite turbulent area. And so there's all sorts of different, like pretty much every conceivable creature just, can exist in the Planescape universe. And in the middle of this big ring is a gigantic spire. In fact, it's infinitely tall. It doesn't stop. It's infinitely tall. You can't really climb it. But despite it being infinitely tall, if you're standing on like the outer edges of the ring, you can see to the top of the spire. However that works. And at the top of the spire is a city. This city is Sigil. And Sigil is a pretty crazy place. It's kind of a donut shape, I guess you could say. There's probably an official term for that. But picture a donut, and the city is on the inside of the donut. And so that's why when you're standing in Sigil, you can look up and you see just more city. And so gravity works very strangely, and really everything works strangely. And one of the key things about Sigil is it's also called the City of Doors, because it is filled with portals. Portals everywhere. And some of the portals are visible. A lot of the portals are invisible. And some of the portals can only be activated by a certain key. And this key can be a physical object, or it can be a thought in your head, or it can be an emotion that you feel in the area, and suddenly the portal opens and you get sucked through. Some of these portals go to different parts of Sigil. Some of these portals go to different part of the Planescape ring, whatever. Some of these portals go to different dimensions entirely. And so there's portals everywhere, and really nobody knows about all the portals except for one person. The Lady of Pain, who rules Sigil. She is Sigil. She is the ultimate, complete tyrant, whatever, of Sigil. And Sigil, as you might expect, in this universe, being at the center of the infinitely tall, or at the top of the infinitely tall spire, would be a very key part for, ownership. Any one of these deities down on this bottom ring, whatever, would want to control Sigil, because that's like, you're the king of the castle, and so it would be a very turbulent place. But the Lady of Pain, and the Lady of Pain alone, decides who can enter and who cannot enter Sigil, and so she doesn't let any deity enter Sigil ever, and she can do that. She just says no, and they can't do shit about it. That's the Lady of Pain. Really, the Lady of Pain is basically the DM's worst and best weapon of all time, because the Lady of Pain wins. It doesn't matter. You will never beat her. It's not like Call of Cthulhu where they stat out, Yog-Sothoth or something like that. Like, I don't think maybe there's a rulebook that stats out Lady of Pain or something like that, but you would ignore that. If you don't ignore that, you're dumb. Because the Lady of Pain is just Deus Ex Machina in personification, And she can do whatever she wants, and if she looks at you and she doesn't like how you look or how you feel or how whatever, if you even think about her in a wrong way, or if you even think about worshipping her, she doesn't even like to be worshipped. If you think about worshipping her, she'll just, boom, you're gone. And you'll either die if you're lucky, or if you're unlucky, you can get sent to a personal maze, which is a pocket dimension where all it is just your maze. And you'll probably never get out, but you can't die in your maze, and you can't starve, you can't dehydrate, or anything like that. All you can do is just run around the maze for the rest of existence. And it's really a really terrible fate. Sometimes you can escape. I think there are, if she's feeling in a good mood or whatever, maybe there's a way you can escape in 1,000 years or something like that. But anyways, so that's Sigil, that's Lady of Pain. I've already talked about all this before, and Spoony talks about this some more. I've never played or run anything in Planescape, even though I would love to, because it is a very fascinating world, but I'll have to settle for just playing Planescape Torment. Okay, so that's where our campaign ended, which I thought was cool. We didn't all end up just dying or something like that. We ended with a cool possibility of coming back someday. Okay, so we didn't really get any sort of resolution to anything. We didn't, but there was no time. Like, you're not going to wrap that up in 3.5 hours or anything like that. Defeating Golk and uniting all these things and bringing back, it just wasn't going to happen. So it was fine. It was fine. I'm sorry I had to kind of rush the campaign, and I really didn't have to rush the campaign. But on the one hand, I really want to get to Call of Cthulhu because I'm pretty sure it's my favorite thing to be a part of. Love Call of Cthulhu, and also I really don't like 5th edition D&D. And that's nothing against Ren. I didn't know better when I went into it, and I would have stuck it out, but yeah. I wouldn't, if somebody came up to me, one of whoever, and was like, I'm doing a 5th edition campaign in D&D, do you want to join? And, it was people that I all liked, and it was going to be a good DM or whatever like that. I'd be like, yeah, sure. Because I like role-playing, whatever. But I could live without ever playing 5th edition D&D again. So, that's all she wrote for that. Yeah, it was a fun little campaign. We had a lot of fun moments. Ovum, as always, was a hoot and all that. Spendrick was crazy, and so on and so forth. It was good. It was good. It was a good time. But we will now be carrying over with the same group, with me DMing, plus Ziggy, plus maybe somebody else. We'll see what happens. But definitely at least those 5. And we will be switching over to Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, the brand new edition. The physical books are apparently not even out yet. I did not back the Kickstarter, otherwise I'd be hoping to get it pretty soon, but I don't know when the physical books are available for purchase. I hope soon, because I like having that. But I have read through the whole PDF of the rule book. And 7th edition, I like it, actually. I like the changes they've made to 7th edition. It's getting, I think, even further. It's getting even more pulpy, I guess. Like, it's getting even less Lovecraftian. And I think that's really signified by the fact that in the 7th edition rulebook, maybe I have like an early PDF or something like that, but I doubt it. They took out Call of Cthulhu. In the other rulebooks in the past, or definitely at least in the 6th edition, I'm pretty sure in earlier ones, they included the entire short story, The Call of Cthulhu, by H.P. Lovecraft. It was right at the start. They included the whole thing. It's not very long, but they included it, and it really kind of set the tone. Because, I mean, for one, it's Lovecraft. It's a very Lovecraft-esque story, but also it's kind of a strange Lovecraft story because it's the most... Well, it's not even the most pulpiest of Lovecraft stories, I guess. But it's not like, I don't know, what's a really Lovecraftian-esque one? I don't know, like Color Out of Space, or something like that. You know, it's different than that. There's, you encounter Cthulhu, and you ram the ship into him, which is just crazy bullshit. It's not bullshit, but it's crazy, and, you know, there's action to it, and there's police raids, you know, stuff like that. You know, it really set the tone, and they took that out. I don't know why. It is a pretty long book, but that felt so vital to it. I don't know why they took that out. That seems so strange. So they took that out. They also took out The Haunting. The Haunting scenario is not in the book. And The Haunting has been a staple for Call of Cthulhu, I think, since the start. Like, I think, as I've said before, at one point, maybe that was a Hanging with Mang or something, where I said, if The Haunting is not the first thing you play in Call of Cthulhu, something's wrong. And I know I'm contradicting that yet again by bringing in a few new people to Call of Cthulhu and not doing The Haunting. But I think the one that I have planned, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is actually really good as well. The Haunting is available in the 7th edition Quick Start rules, but the fact that they didn't include it in the book was kind of strange. I didn't read over any of the new ones that they put in, but I'm sure they're fine. But The Haunting is just so classic. So, yeah, 7th edition seems pretty cool. Most of the stuff is pretty the same. Key differences are characteristics are a little changed. In 6th edition earlier, you had very low numbers for your characteristics, your attributes. So you'd have like a 12 strength, a 10 power, a 16 appearance, something like that. And then for certain characteristic roles, like to open a door or something like that. Actually, that's not a great example. But to do something strength related, you might have to roll strength times 3. You know, you might have to roll under a strength times 3. And so they wanted to kind of reduce the math and kind of unify everything, because characteristics were always very low. You know, 10, 12, 16, 6, 18, whatever. Whereas skills were, you know, of course, part of the D100 thing. So these numbers range from 1 to 99. And they wanted to unify it a little bit across the board on the sheet to make everything a bit easier to read and a bit easier for math. So all your characteristics on the sheet are multiplied by 5 right away. So you roll your 3d6 and then you multiply that number by 5. So your strength might be 60, your intelligence 75, so on and so forth. And that goes right hand in hand then with your skills. And I like that because I think that does make everything easier. Because they changed it so like... there's degrees of success then. A normal success is you roll under the number. So you roll a normal strength success of rolling against 75 would be like 70. You know, that'd be a normal success. Then they have half the value. That's called a hard success. So if your strength is 60 and you roll under 30, that is a hard success, which is better. And then a extreme success is under 1/5. So if you have a 60 strength, that's like 12, rolling under 12. And so that's like the really difficult stuff. And so that's kind of just across the board a lot easier to understand. And they took out the resistance table, which was pretty good, because the resistance table is kind of bullshit. And I've seen other people complain about it. And one guy I read tried to fix it. And the chart that guy came up with was actually really good. I think that might be in one of my handbooks. But the problem with the resistance table, it was very easy to get into a situation where it was impossible to do something. Like, just absolutely, like, it said 0% chance that you can't do this. And nobody likes that. Nobody likes that, especially in 6th edition, where they introduced it so that you could, every skill more or less had a 1% chance to succeed. So they wanted you to have this thing where you always felt like you could succeed, but then they had the resistance table where you could easily not ever be able to succeed. So it was strange. So 7th edition changed, took out the resistance table completely, and now they have the degrees of success. So you have if it's a really tough door, you might need an extreme strength success. So that number might be like 6 or lower, which is really tough still, but it's still possible. And then for opposed rolls against like NPCs, you both roll your things, and whoever has the better degree of success. So if you roll an extreme, I roll a hard, you would win, so on and so forth. So okay. So that's a big change. I like that. That's all good. Then they also changed influencing rolls, giving investigators like a better chance at succeeding. You know, not just being completely screwed if you roll badly. They do this 2 ways. One is by introducing pushed rolls, which is good. I like it. Actually, 3 ways, to be honest. Pushed rolls are cool. Pushed rolls are basically if you fail a roll, but you can come up with an excuse or a reason on why you would be able to get to try again. So say you fail to like shoulder in a door. Like you don't give it enough oomph and you fail. You just hit up against it. You could say, well, I want to try again. That would be just a pushed roll, and you'd get to re-roll. And if you succeed, fine. Good, just like succeeding normally. But if you fail the pushed roll, then it's bad. It's even worse. It's like a consequence. You might actually injure your shoulder, or you might, you might actually bash through, but there was an alarm or something like that. Some sort of negative consequence to failing a pushed roll. But it has to be something that you could conceivably try again. Like, they say that no matter what, when you do a pushed roll, some amount of time has passed. So it's not like you can't push roll for trying to grab something, Because once you fail the grab, time has passed, you're done, that's it. So yeah, time is going to pass before you can try again. It's not like a re-roll, it's another attempt. So that's good, because there's going to be a lot of situations where you're not in the midst of things where you want to try again and you want to push the rolls, whereas some systems just like, well, you failed, sorry. D&D, basically. So that's good, I like that. The other is luck. Luck in early editions was just derived from your power stat, and it wasn't that important. It was basically just occasionally the DM would ask for a luck roll for anything involving fate, If the keys were in the car, or if you can hail down a taxi, or if there was an axe in the shed, or, all sorts of stuff like that, where fate was the main determiner. You'd roll luck. And so it was always okay, but it could be more, and 7th edition makes it more. So with luck in 7th edition, you can spend luck points to add to or to reduce a roll, basically. So say you're rolling strength, you're trying to roll under 50, and you roll a 55. Well, that sucks. I missed it by 5. That really pisses me off. You can spend 5 luck points to bring it down to 50 and succeed. And these are luck points you'll get back a little bit at like the end of every session, they say. You'll get back a small amount. But it's not like something you can just, oh, luck, hey, I'm lucky, yeah, you know. But it's there. You can use it. So you could save it up for one very huge, important roll, like the roll of your life, basically. You could save it and be like, well, I'm spending 70 luck points. You could do that. But I imagine a lot of people are just going to use it, being, oh man, I missed it by one. By one? In the old days, it's just like, that's such bullshit. But here it's just like, spend a luck point. Done. Like, 1 is not that big. 2 or 3 is not that big. So that's really good. That's a really good change. I like that. I can't be angry about that as a DM, because I don't want people to just fail all the time from bullshit rolls, like in D&D. So that's a good change. And then the final is bonus dies. Bonus dies or penalty dies. They basically ripped the advantage-disadvantage system from 5th edition. If you're in a situation in which you have, like, an advantage, you know, you have this positive thing that really affects how you're going to perform this action, you get a bonus die, which basically means you get to roll twice and take the better result. They say you roll the tens dice twice. So if you roll a 24, you re-roll the tens, and so you can either choose a 24 or a 44, you know. But I don't really see the point of that, and that's complicated on roll 20, so I'm just going to say you roll twice, take the better result. It's real simple. Everybody gets it. And then penalty die like disadvantage, same thing. It's a negative thing. You roll 2 dice, take the worst result. And I don't know how often I'm going to be throwing these around or anything like that. They give some situations as examples, but it will be in there. It will be a thing that people probably strive to do. And it's really, I mean, that's a big deal. You get to roll twice, take the better result. Everybody loves that. And then you include pushing rolls and being able to do luck. It's like, it's really good. It just keeps things flowing, because you don't want to stop all the fun because of a shitty roll. That's not fun for anybody. You want to keep them clipping, and everybody's having good rolls and good times, and, you know, surviving by the skin of your teeth and all kinds of stuff like that. That's good fun. Failing rolls, not fun. Or at least it shouldn't be fun if you're some kind of sadistic DM. But anyways, so that's 7th edition. I have good feelings about it. I think it'll be good. Oh, also they changed it so you can use Cthulhu Mythos as being able to create any spell effect. That's cool. I like that. We'll see if that ever gets used. But anyways, the one-shot that I'm going to be running next Monday, it's actually a systemless scenario. So it's just like a story, and there's NPCs and stuff like that, but there's no stats. It's not written for any system. Most people are going to be running Call of Cthulhu when playing this, but you could use Fate easily. Very much so. You could run Fate. Or D&D or anything. You could use any system. So I've never encountered it before. I knew they existed, but this is my first time trying it. Obviously, I would prefer it if it was written for Call of Cthulhu, but obviously that's more work, and then you can't as easily throw it to others. It's fine. It's really not that big of a deal. And so it's called Bryson Springs, if you want to look it up. And it's written by this guy, Caleb Stokes. And he did, apparently, a live playthrough, like a recorded playthrough of it. And I've been listening to it to kind of get a feel for how I should run it. And it seems like a very cool scenario. Like, it's really classic horror stuff going on here. There's a lot of cliches. There's cliches written into the scenario, but then in your head, and when I'm going to run it, there's going to be even more cliches coming out. Like, it just lends itself very much to that. But that's okay. Cliches are fun. People know what to expect, and you have a good time with it. But then there's also some really crazy shit going on that nobody's going to be expecting. And yeah, so it's systemless, so I had to come up with some stats and stuff like that. It actually didn't come with a map, which I think would be the one thing they should add. I had to draw my own map up for it. And how I pictured it and how the guy that wrote it in the live playthrough imagined it is different. So I might change it, probably not. But yeah, basically they give you the story, they give you the setup, they give you all the NPCs, and they give you basically what needs to happen to kind of resolve everything. But everything else is up to you, which normally would be kind of daunting, but is written very well and very concisely. And so I can basically picture everything in my mind, how everything connects together. And they include like a relationship map, so you can see how all the different NPCs, link to each other. And I feel very comfortable about going into this and running it. It was really well done. You can buy it, you can get it for free. Like, on Drive RPG or whatever, you can get it for free. So yeah, it should be really cool. It's set in 1935 during the Dust Bowl in Eastern California, and it's just like there's a Hooverville, and it's just really run down. It's just like a shithole part of America, and they're not going through good times, and they're not about to have any good times in the near future. I can tell you that. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. So after we do that one shot, the following Monday, we will be running the big granddaddy of shit, Horror on the Orient Express. This is the brand new reprint from the Kickstarter and all that. I did not back the Kickstarter. I bought this retail. It's selling for $120 on Chaosium's website, selling for $72 on Amazon. I was like, well, okay. So yeah, this box, like, look at this. Look at this. I don't know if you can get a good reference for how big this is, but the box is like 9 pounds, and it just comes stacked with shit. I don't want to get into this too much because I'm going to be doing Secrets of Role-Playing and stuff. But it comes with like physical props. It comes with this Traveler's Companion that's written like in character in the 1920s and describes the Orient Express and all the different stops. And it's really like, this would be really good to have if they were in person. We were playing in person. It comes with this big map of the route across Europe. If I can show you this shit. Like this, you can see all the different stuff they're going to be encountering. And London and France and Bulgaria and Constantinople, all sorts of shit. It comes with this pouch that has passports. Like, look at this. It comes with this passport that people can fill out. This is really funny to me because this is implying that the same 5 characters are going to survive from the beginning to the end. That's ridiculous. It comes with these postcards, more postcards, a bumper sticker you can put on your car to show people how really nerdy you are. It comes with this little matchbook, but since they can't send matches across the postal service, it includes toothpicks. And then you get to the actual campaign books. And I have a couple sitting over there because I'm reading them. But here's, 4 of them just sitting here. Here's, the book 3, Italy and Beyond. Book 4, Constantinople and Consequence. 5, Strangers on the Train. Here's the handout book. I swear to you, this is the handout book for the investigators. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. This is all handouts. Oh my gosh. And so yeah, this book is completely worthless to me because we're playing online. That really bums me out. And then it includes, what else has it got in here? It's got more shit, don't worry. It's got more shit. $70, you get your money's worth. You get these. These are like, this is like cardstock blueprints or whatever of the train cars, so people can have these in front of them at all times and see how the cars are displayed. So be like, oh yeah, I'm in this room right here. Oh, you're in this room. You can put your miniatures on here if you were playing in person. What else has it got? It's got this sheet telling you what's all in the box, which is massive. It's got this, which is really plot important, and I shouldn't be showing it to you, but there's like scrolls, and they actually tell you to cut these out with like an X-Acto knife, and so people can actually look at these scrolls, and they're just as illegible as they should be in the game. And what else does it got? Well, it's got this shit, which I really shouldn't be showing you, but it's like a statue that you can actually, you're supposed to cut these out and give pieces to the people as they collect them in the campaign so they can hold on to it. And it's like, oh god, I wish I was playing in person. it'll be a fun time. It'll be a lot of fun playing online. We got a good cast of people. We're going to have, you know, plenty of fun. But I hope someday down the line, maybe 20, 30 years from now, because I'm still going to have this. I'm still going to have all this. I'm not going to really blemish any of it. I hope I can run it in person for, you know, a really excited group of people for a year, and we have all the handouts, everything cut out, people collecting stuff as they play. It feels like they're really going across this epic journey. Yeah, someday. So yeah, that's Horror on the Orient Express. I don't know. I don't think I'll do... I don't know. I'm not sure if I want to do a Secrets of Role-Manging before the first episode of the campaign. You guys can let me know what you think about that. It would basically be a broad primer of the basic plot of the campaign. I wouldn't get into too many details right off the bat, because I like to fill it in on the way, but it would be a basic primer about what the campaign's about. But again, if you are watching this and you are going to be a part of the campaign, Secrets of Role-Manging is completely off the table for you. You cannot view any of it because it would spoil everything, and that would be no fun for you or for me. So that is not an option. But if you are not part of the campaign, I think that Secrets of Role-Manging is as good as the normal Role-Manging videos, if not better, because we really get to explore and take an in-depth look at how well-crafted some of these campaigns are. Look at it. This is like half of the books they give you. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so Horror on the Orient Express. It's a big campaign. I think it's much bigger than Masks, but it should be a hell of a time. But anyways, I think I'm done talking for now. Next week, we will get to see how shit goes down in Bryson Springs. But that is the end of the D&D campaign. I hope you all enjoyed listening to our fun adventures in the crazy Final Fantasy / Nyarlathotep D&D campaign with an interesting cast of characters. But my name is Mang. This has been Role-Manging. I'll see you fine folks next week.